The pain threshold. The pain threshold. I'm sure you guys have heard of it before. When the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of change, that is when an individual changes. I'm going to say it again. When the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of change, that is when an individual changes. But it's not that simple. For those of you who are watching this, who for weeks, for months, for years, seem to not be able to lock in, no matter what you do, you fix yourself for maybe a couple weeks. You get a streak going. But then inevitably, every single fucking time, you slip up again. You give back into your vices, whatever it is, right? It's almost like there's nothing you can do about it. You take 2 steps forward and then 3 steps back. And no matter what, you're always right back to where you started, or worse. Let me explain something to you. It may look really motivating on social media. You may hear people talk about the moment where the big realization hit them and they hit the ultimate pain threshold and they quit weed or drugs or smoking or alcohol or their porn addiction. Just like that. Never again. They never did it again. They never slipped up again. Are a lot of those people probably lying or grifting on social media? Sure. But for some of them, it's true. I'll give you an example. My grandfather, he used to smoke. And one time, my dad, when he was a little kid, he picked up a little cigarette butt off the ground. It was probably my grandfather's. And my dad, he put it up to his lips, and his dad was watching. And my dad was like, look, I'm like my dad. I want to be like my dad. And in that very moment, my grandfather quit smoking for the rest of his life. He's told my dad to drop it and to not do that. It's not good for him. And never again, for the rest of his life, did he ever smoke. That moment set the trajectory for the rest of his life. He decided in that moment that he was never going to do it again, and he didn't, because he didn't want his son to see him doing that and to let that influence him. And that's an example of the pain threshold. When the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of change. And there's all kinds of stories like that you see people say on social media, where everything changed for them. And it sounds extremely motivating. And it makes you think, man, I just need a moment like that, where everything's going to magically change. You hear these stories all the time. They're everywhere on social media. People saying, the night where they broke down, and they just couldn't take it anymore, and so they finally fucking locked in. Their back was against the wall, as they say, right? Their back was against the wall. In the sense of, and this is an extreme example, if someone kidnapped your entire family and told you needed to make $10,000 within the next 3 months, and you've never made that kind of money before, and if you didn't, they were going to kill your entire family, right? Things like that. That is an extreme example of hitting an extreme pain threshold that forces you to take action even when motivation is not even present. And here's the truth about the pain threshold that I didn't fucking realize for years. The pain threshold is not the solution. Having a big emotional moment or a night of realization where you're like, fuck, I'm never gonna do that again. I'm fucking done. I'm done with my vices. I'm done with this addiction. I'm done watching porn. I'm done being broke. I'm done being a fat fucking idiot. I'm finally gonna start to go to the gym. Right? We think when we have these big emotional moments, everything's gonna change. And they're just magically gonna fix everything. But here's the truth. Not every single one of us has hit a pain threshold deep enough and hard enough to the point where it forces you to change overnight. That is very rare. Very rare. And because you keep expecting that to happen, because you keep expecting these big moments of realizations and these emotional moments, because you keep expecting them to fix you magically, and the next day and the next week, you're just gonna be a new person. The fact that you keep thinking that this fairy tale is gonna exist, and it could, depending on how deep your pain threshold is, but the fact that you keep expecting it to, that it's the solution, you're fucking yourself. Keep shooting yourself in the leg. Because when it's not the solution, and you inevitably do slip up, especially if you're struggling with something like an addiction, which rarely fixes overnight because it's years of wiring, when all of a sudden that realization didn't save you, you decide to spiral. Because you're like, well, I guess this wasn't it yet. It wasn't the right time yet. And you feel like you failed yourself. So you say, fuck it. And you let yourself dig the hole even deeper. Here's the truth about the pain threshold. It exists on a spectrum. Only the most intense of pain thresholds you can possibly hit is enough to make you actually change overnight, to quit an addiction of years overnight, to force you to finally start going to the gym consistently, to take your health seriously, your nutrition, your diet, to stop being broke, to actually lock in on learning a skill or getting a high-paying job or taking consistent action every day on your business or whatever the fuck you need to do in your life. The pain threshold exists on a spectrum. A lot of the times you are not going to hit one that is enough to magically make you the person you want to become overnight and quit that vice or that addiction or whatever it is. It's usually not going to be enough. And you thinking that the pain threshold is going to be the solution or your big motivational realization, even a night where you break down crying or some shit. If you think that's going to be the solution, you're deeply mistaken. Because the pain threshold exists on a spectrum, and most of the time, you are not hitting it on the most intense level. You're just having a smaller one. And what you have to realize is the pain threshold only gives you the willingness and the motivation to decide that you want to change, that you don't want to continue being in the position that you're currently in. The change exists in the small actions that you take every day. The small actions on your work, or the small action of the refusal to give in to the temptation. That is how you rewire your brain. The pain threshold is simply the fuel. It gives you the motivation and the willingness to decide that you want to do so. But the change, the rewiring of your brain, actually comes in the small, boring, unsexy actions every day. Because the reality is most of you still give yourself a chance, a choice. Most of you still give yourself an out. You may have hit the pain threshold, but if there's even an ounce in your environment, in your circumstance, that gives you the outlet to take the easy way out or to indulge in comfort, even just a little bit more, your brain is always going to take that. This is what you have to understand. It doesn't matter if you broke down one night and you said you were sick and fucking tired of being broke. Or if you were sick and fucking tired of being a fat ass. Or if you were sick of having, like I said, a porn addiction or not talking to girls, whatever the fuck it is. It doesn't matter, because if in your circumstance you still have an outlet to engage in comfort temporarily, if you didn't hit a pain threshold so extreme to the point where someone kidnapped your family and told you they were going to kill them unless you did X, or you were going to, lose your property or your house if you didn't do X, or you accidentally got someone pregnant, right? And you needed to provide on the spot for that woman and that child. If you didn't hit a pain threshold that deep, most of the time, you're not going to be able to magically quit an addiction or change overnight. And this is what I'm saying. Most of you have not hit a pain threshold that deep because it exists on a spectrum. Most of you have only hit it on an entry level or maybe towards the middle, as I have myself. And when we are in these scenarios, what I've learned finally after fucking years, and I hope that you can now understand, brother, is one big night of an emotional realization is not going to magically fix your problems. And if you expect it to, when it fails you, and you have a burst of arousal and it fails you, and your experience is a violation of your expectation, you will spiral. And you will dig the fucking hole deeper. You will have taken 3 steps forward and 5 steps back. Or ended up right back to where you fucking were before. So if there's one thing that you take away from this video, brother, it's that if you are struggling right now with an addiction, or if you're struggling right now with not being content in your environment, in your situation, whatever it is, because I don't know who you are on the other side of this video, know that you are not fucking alone, and understand that you need to confront yourself and ask yourself the question, do you really want it? Or do you just like the idea of it? If you don't make the sacrifice of comfort that you need to right now, if you don't make the sacrifice, your future self will become the sacrifice. Your future self is not going to save you. Only your present self is going to save your future. You're thinking about it fucking backwards. And as long as you keep having these big moments of realizations, these mini pain thresholds, and thinking that now that I have the motivation and the realization to change, I'm magically going to change and break my addiction and finally lock in. As long as you think that, the more you will continue to stay exactly where you were. And inevitably, if you keep doing that, eventually there will be enough pressure to change. And you will hit a pain threshold that truly throws your back against the wall. And you don't want that to happen. You want to get ahead of it. You want to get ahead of it, brother. these moments, they only give you the motivation and the willingness to change. They are not, in 99% of scenarios, they're not going to be the change. Because as I said, most of us still exist in an environment where we can still engage in the comfort and the outlet temporarily until a bigger pain threshold is hit. And if that's the case, as I said, your brain is always going to take the easy way out. The difference between the people who hit pain thresholds so extreme to where they do magically change overnight, the stories that you hear and see, and then the people that have a pain threshold and they lock in temporarily but then fall off again and then slip up again, the difference between those people is the people that magically changed in one night. They hit a pain threshold so deep to the point where they no longer had a choice. This is the reality. They no longer had a choice. They could not give in to their addictions anymore. Or they could not afford to live in the condition that they've been living in because of some external thing. And you want to know the truth about it? Even the people that hit the most extreme of pain thresholds, they don't have the same motivation the next day that they did that night, or whenever it was that they hit that pain and they felt that pain. They still don't have the same amount of motivation. Remember how you'll have that night and you'll get that extreme burst of motivation and fire, but it won't be there the next day or maybe a couple days later or a week later when you slip up? Well, guess what? The people that do magically change overnight, the same thing happens to them. They don't have the same fire that they did that night or that moment when they truly hit that pain threshold. They didn't have that same fire after that either, that same level. But the difference is they didn't have a choice anymore. You still have a choice. If you still have an ounce of ability to give in to the comfort temporarily, after you had that big realization, big emotional moment, your brain is still going to take the outlet. And that's why you keep locking in for a week and slipping up again. Is because you still have the choice. And it's up to you to take the action that you need to do to change so that you don't get to the point where you also don't have a choice anymore, because that's not a good spot to be in. You are not always going to be motivated, brother. That's not how it works. You're not supposed to be motivated 24/7. You should be dedicated. Are you motivated or are you dedicated to becoming the best fucking version of yourself? Because time is running out. You do not have as much time as you fucking think you do. The clock is ticking. The clock is fucking ticking, brother. What are you gonna do about it? Your future self is relying on your present self to make the current sacrifice. What will you do?